Sinas chinam means that the other group is not legitimate. We have to get rid of that. And that's why I say, in this sense, I feel Chappelle's and Darche Noam can play a tremendous role in every neighborhood that they go to.
Welcome to Rebbi, I Have a Question, a podcast from Chappelle's and Midrashet Rachel V'Chaya. I'm your host, Donna Margolis, and in each episode, I sit down with Rabbi Shurin to explore one real question sent in by a student or alum. Questions about family, relationships, identity, and the lifelong journey of becoming a Torah Jew. This time, before we begin, I'd like to tell you about something exciting happening at Chappelle's and Midrashet Rachel V'Chaya. We are currently in the middle of our $1 million campaign. Every gift helps make it possible for another student to experience the kind of Torah education we'll be talking about today, an education that continues to shape lives long after students leave Chappelle's and MRC. To learn more or to make a gift, please visit www.darchenoam.org/1million. And I'll spell that just to make sure you get it right. www.darchenoam.org/1million. Now to today's conversation. So today's episode is actually a little bit different. It isn't actually based on one specific student question, but instead it's based on a conversation we, the staff at Chappelle's and MRC, have had with alumni countless times over the years. Many students leave Chappelle's and MRC with a particular approach to Torah, to people, and to the Jewish world. They learn to have deep conviction in their own beliefs while also respecting sincere Torah Jews who make different legitimate choices. They learn to appreciate complexity, to avoid reducing people to labels, and to recognize that there can be more than one authentic Torah path. Then they leave Chappelle's or MRC and become part of wonderful communities that don't always share the same outlook. Rabbi Shurin, let's start with this. Hi, Rabbi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Pretty good, Baruch Hashem. Busy with the campaign.
I know, me too. And I will have to start by apologizing to our listeners that I am on the tail end of a pretty bad cold. So hopefully you won't be able to tell. Okay, you ready for the first question?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so just so our listeners understand, we have Chappelle's and we have MRC. Both schools are under the umbrella institution called Darche Noam institutions. Okay, and that name was chosen very purposefully. It really describes our approach. So I'd like to ask you, when you think about what you've tried to teach students over the past 40 plus years, how would you define that approach? Specifically, why has it always been important to teach students to respect sincere Torah Jews whose hashkafic or communal choices may differ from their own?
Well, great question. I have to tell you, really good question. Okay, so let me try to clarify what I would, or what I actually still do, but I always have done this with my students. Let me start by saying, we always talk about this, like sort of the inside joke is that Darche Noam or Chappelle's and Midrashet don't really have hashkafa. A lot of people from different streams within Judaism are saying that, and in their minds it's probably true, but of course they're understanding hashkafa very differently than we do. So let me take something out of Rabbi Hirschfeld, take something out of his ideology, which I think will be a good introduction to this. Rabbi Hirschfeld said Yes, we have hashkafa and they have hashkafa. But the way we define hashkafa, there are two like aspects to it. There's primary hashkafa and the secondary hashkafa. And what we call secondary hashkafa, they call hashkafa. Okay.
Hmm.
But what is primary hashkafa? And that's really what myself as a Darche Noam um, representative, um, primary hashkafa means we want every student, including ourselves, but we want every student to make Torah Judaism and Kiyama mitzvahs, right? Um, a essential part of their lives. That's
Okay.
what we're looking for. A lot of the men and women do come in with some Judaism, obviously, right? There's a certain commitment that they have. But is Judaism essential part of their lives or just part of their lives? So for us, we try as much as possible for the students to really get to a place where the center of their lives is Torah, mitzvos, halacha, right? That's what is primary Judaism for us. Okay. And anything like, that's, Yud Gimel Ikarim of the Rambam, that's primary Judaism. In other words, primary Judaism is something that nobody disagrees with. And if I say I want my students to make their Judaism a central part of their lives, no one's going to say to me, oh, I disagree. In the Haredi world, they won't say they disagree. In the Tilumi world, they won't say they disagree. In the Ashkenazi world, they won't say. In the Sephardi world, they won't say. And the Hasidic world won't say it. They all will agree that Torah Judaism should be a central part of your lives. Okay? So that's why I always encourage when my students say, okay, Rabbi Shurin, what is your hashkafa? And that's what I say. That's my hashkafa. And that's primary hashkafa. Secondary hashkafa means all the different colors that Judaism has become over the years. And they have taken on many, many um, uh, different types of Jews, right? In a very colorful way. I look at it as a very colorful way. You'll have the Dati Lumi, and you'll have the Haredi, and you have the Hasidi, right? And within that, you have also, subcategories of, the modern Haredi,
Hmm.
the Dati Lumi Machmir, right? Dati Lumi Light, right? And so there's so many different ones, right? That we have. And as far as Rabbi Yaakov, my grandfather used to say, if they if halacha if their hashkafa is based on their halacha on halacha, I should say, meaning their hashkafa, whatever they've become within that that large spectrum of Judaism, if it's based basically on halacha, then it's legitimate. And he used to say that the 12 tribes were not all the same. They didn't
Hmm.
have they all didn't have the same jobs, right? And they all were called together at the end of Yaakov's life, even though he gave a bracha to each one separately, and they were very different brachas. He had them all standing together. Rabbi Yaakov says because he wanted them to know that they're all 1/12 of the nation, and
Hmm.
they're all needed. All the
Hmm.
different colors are needed, and there are people who are going to fit into this one and not fit into that one. It's good that they have choices, because if they don't have choices, then um, then they may just leave Judaism. Okay. Recently, I had a woman who sat in our class at Midrash Rachel, who's from a Hasidic family in Borough Park, and she said she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to be that Hasidic anymore. She didn't want to belong to that group or any Hasidic group, and she thought she now has to become secular. And then um, she met Allison Shapiro, and Allison Shapiro said, she says to a lot of Hasidic girls and boys, you don't have to become secular. There's a lot of places
Rabbi,
in.
let me
Yeah.
just interrupt you for a second. I just want our listeners to know that the rabbi here is talking about who you may know as Allison Josephs. She uses the name Allison Josephs. We know her by Allison Shapiro. She's actually an alumna of Midrash Rachel, and she runs a wonderful program one of them is called Jew in the City, and then she has an offshoot of Jew in the City that is called Makom. Now you take it away, Rabbi.
Right. And this makom really is basically for Hasidic uh, kids who, I would say teenagers or even past being teenagers who didn't find their place in the Hasidic world, which we know that none of these streams are for everybody, You got to fit in. And many times I have a son who adheres very much to the Breslov Hasidus, right? He didn't grow up with it in my house, right? But he so connects with it. His life changed so much because of it, right? Not that you necessarily would see it when you look at him, but what's important in Judaism is the inside, not the outside, right?
Hmm.
And that's what he lives his life in many ways through Reb Nachman. And that's fine. I'm glad that there was this option. There wasn't the Reb Nachman option when I was growing up. Reb Nachman was on the outs. It was not an option. Then he became very popular, right? And you'll find, Hasidish types that are Reb Nachman, and you'll find non-Hasidish types. You find the Chabakukim, right? The guys with the yarmulkes that look like helmets with the long payas and the blue tzitzis out, right? They're a whole different group, Rav Kook, Chabad, and they got Breslov in there too. So these are, and it's so legitimate because they want to be Torah observant Jews. That's
Hmm.
exactly it.
Hmm.
So so we have to really understand that there's all these different streams and that it's a good thing because people will find their place much more easily than if they're just pushed into one stream, right? And that's what we're very much about at Midrash Rachel. We really respect all the different streams, and we have teachers that certainly represent a lot of these different groups and these different approaches, and that's part of it. I want the women, certainly Midrash Rachel, and the men as well, to be able to choose what they're, really what they're most comfortable. I would say a little different. I would say they should choose what excites them within
Hmm.
Judaism, a stream which excites them, helps them grow in their Judaism, and most important, helps them become a better them because they've joined because they joined this group. Hold on one second. Yeah. So in other words, I want them to become the best person they can be within the world of Judaism, within Torah Judaism. So I think that if they're really excited about who they're becoming, um, and it fits their goals in Judaism, I think that's something that really could help them become, much, much better Jews, much better people. Okay. That only happens if you offer a number of different hashkafas. Am I being clear?
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you're saying, but and I guess the truth is what I'm really thinking about is how moved I am by your personal example. Meaning, we're going to talk about parenting a little bit later, but
Right.
the example that you shared about your own son really is it's sort of at the essence of what this whole question is all about. Because if you really were adamant that your son had to, follow in the way that the type of Judaism that excites you or that makes the most sense to you, I think you've shared with me before that you don't really know if he would have found that or would have found his place and exactly what would have happened to him. But today he's married and has children and a beautiful family and is happy and is spending from what I understand, in various ways, his life totally engrossed in his Judaism. So
Right.
it wasn't even like a b'diavad. It wasn't this has really helped him to be able to make Judaism, like you said at the beginning, at the forefront of the essence of his life. And I'm just so moved by that example.
Mhm. I really feel that sometimes parents don't give enough. And one actually Haredi psychologist once said to me, the problem with the Haredi parents many times is that they view every other group as b'di'evet.
Hmm.
So the kid, when they leave the group of the Haredi world, right, they feel like they're losers. And therefore they join a different group. Let's say they join the world, the Zionistic world or the Dati Lumi world. They can't make them feel like losers because then they might as well they start feeling, so why am I religious at all if my parents don't think that this is real Judaism?
Uh-huh.
In other words, we have to begin ourselves to learn to respect the other groups and look for things in the other groups that are very positive.
Hmm.
Okay? And
Hmm.
every one of these groups has positive things, and in
Hmm.
some cases that the other group doesn't have.
Yeah, by the way, I think that parents struggle with that when not just Haredi parents, it's really all, even secular
Correct.
parents, of course, when their
Correct.
kids choose something different.
Right. Dati Lumi parents really struggle when a kid becomes a little bit more on the Haredi side.
Right.
They struggle with it. We have alumni that struggle with it.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm dealing with one alum right now who is struggling with, the fact that her child is learning in Lakewood. And I
Yeah.
sat with her on the phone explaining, how positive that could be, you
Mhm.
know.
Right.
So I mean, we'll get into children later, more
Okay.
into how we have
Good.
to teach the children. But what I'm trying to say now is what's relevant is they have to give the kids space within their Judaism. If they give them space, the chance of them remaining true to Judaism are much greater.
Good. Okay. Now, like we said, we will touch that on the topic of parenting a little bit later on in this conversation. But what I want to get to before we do that, and I think it has something to do, by the way, with parenting, is that, and this is really something that our alumni have spoken to us a lot about, that they experience this kind of let's call it utopia. I'm not sure it's quite utopia, but this like very multidimensional approach when they're in the school. And then they choose a community to live in, and all of a sudden it's almost like they find out that it's not actually the real world, right? Like that the real world doesn't function with people having this level of, call it respect or appreciation, or at least at the very least legitimacy for alternative Torah streams to their own. So sometimes our alumni, it's not, either they feel pressure that they have to choose one, or they just don't really know what to do with the openness that they came into the community with when they don't really feel that that's what's supported where they live. So I guess the question for you, Rabbi, is how should they navigate that? Like, how do you actually become a committed member of your community and still hold on to that appreciation for other Torah paths that you developed while you were at Chappelle's or Midrashet Rachel, if that's difficult?
Right. It's an excellent question. And I'm sure a lot of our alumni, in fact, struggle with this to an extent. But I want to start by saying many of our alumni are going to choose a stream. And some of our alumni or students have asked me, Rabbi Shurin, do I have to choose a stream? Right. And I usually say to them, if you don't choose a stream, you'll be a little bit lonely
Mm-hmm.
because you're living in a certain neighborhood and you don't fit in exactly, right? And you want to fit in. It's so much easier to choose a stream, and it actually is easier in the sense also of, oh, this is what the stream does, so I'll do it. But we're not taught that really in Chappelle's or Chappelle. We're taught that every issue we have to think through. What, no matter what stream we've joined, we don't, we don't place our brain at the door, because we join the stream, right? So, and we really teach them that and we stress it very strongly that, there's no stream that's perfect and there's no stream that doesn't have some really great things to it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they have to be able, they have to be able to look for that. You have to look for it. Um, so let me just start by saying that, Uh, the fact that you join a stream doesn't mean I can't respect the other streams. Now, it's true what you're saying is that a lot of times one stream doesn't respect the other one. But
Hmm.
that's where our alumni come in. Our alumni have to be models for saying, I may be Haredi, but I
Hmm.
respect this stream and that stream, or I may be Dati Lumi and I respect, the Haredi stream and other streams as well. In other words, I think that's the mindset we have to have. I can decide to have a stream, right? Because I don't want to be lonely, right? Or I can decide not to have a stream and be a little bit more lonely, take a
Hmm.
little from here, a little from there. A lot of my Midrash Chal students have told me, Rabbi Shurin, I take a little from Hasidus, I take a little from the Haredi world, I take a little from the Dati Lumi world, right? Uh, because they haven't grown up, thank God, in a world where everyone's judgmental about everyone else's Judaism, right? Which is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Um, they've grown up, they've, especially if they go on to Midrash Chol, they've seen so many different types of from Jews, right? That I've had students that said to me, no, Rabbi Shurin, I really like you and Esther, but I think I want to live my life like teacher X or teacher Y.
Hmm.
And I don't get insulted by it. I'm actually quite happy about it because I feel that, we gave them the option. They
Hmm.
didn't have to become Rabbi Shurin and Esther Shurin. For me, that's great. I like want to dance when a woman says that to me, and she's nervous that I'm going to get insulted. You know,
Hmm.
no, I say, look, this is great. This is wonderful that you see where you fit in, right? You see where you fit in, and one woman came, and she came from Givat Zev, actually, a wonderful family in Givat Zev. I don't remember how she got there for for um for Shabbos, and she said, "Now I know what kind of Judaism I want."
Hmm.
Okay. And this is a very nice family that's it's got Haredi aspects, it's got Zionistic aspects, it's very eclectic. Okay. And I was so happy when she came back Shabbos and she said, like, I got a certain clarity, Rabbi Shurin, which is
Hmm.
great. That's what we want to present to our students.
Uh-huh.
Enough different options that either you decide to take one, right? Or you don't decide to take one. But if you decide to take one, you realize that there's many others that are also valid, even though for you, this is the one that excites you. This is the one that makes you feel the most comfortable. That's what we want. But we know that Rabbi Levine in most areas was Haredi. He was a mashgiach and a bagachir in Eitz Chaim. It's Yerushalmi Yeshiva. No one would say that, this is national religious, right? And he lived his life as a Haredi person, but he was so open to all other types of Judaism, and he respected it, and he looked for the good in it, and he looked for the good in Judaism if the guy even wasn't even from, right? He looked like, he's not religious, but he look what he's doing for Klal Yisrael, right? He's not observant, but look what he's doing for. That's the way we have to start thinking, like Rabbi Levine, right?
Wow.
You know that's so important. Like Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, who was the posek gadol Beretz Yisrael till about 10 years ago, till he passed away. He used to say shurim in Haredi yeshivas, kolim. He used to say shurim in shalavim, in Merkaz Harav, right? Wherever they invited him. What, they want to learn Torah? So let's teach them Torah. He was every Friday, Merkaz Harav Cook Yeshiva used to come to a small little apartment, like 30, 40 guys, and would sit and talk to them in Torah. I remember it. I once came to his house, and his wife said, "You have to wait. He's in the middle of talking to Merkaz Harav." His wife was the daughter of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, right?
Wow.
So it was very inspiring for me that I had to wait outside, and all these guys with big knitted kippot come out because they're the Chardal world, right? And it was great, He looks like a Haredi. There's no two ways about it. He grew up in the Haredi world. He went to Ponevezh. He went to Hebron, right? He was, but Reb Zalman Nechemia was open to every other type of Judaism. He saw the good in all of it, right? He didn't judge it, right? That's the type of people that we want to create at Midrash Shul. Okay, I don't know if I'll create a Reb Zalman Nechemia Goldberg from Shul, but in that sense, I do want to create it, like a Rabbi Levine, right?
Hmm.
These people who looked for the good in Jews and Judaism and
Hmm.
different groups of Jews. This is
Hmm.
so important.
Hmm.
And I have to tell you that, a lot of people when I speak to them, they say to me, if there's no Geula, we'll have Tisha B'Av this year. And this year, I have no doubt we're going to have Tisha B'Av.
Hmm.
I don't mention like, oh, if Mashiach doesn't come, we'll have Tisha B'Av. He isn't coming. Okay?
Explain what you mean, Rabbi. Say
And
it.
I mean that, the religious world, Haredi, Dati Lumi versus the secular world, right? The secular world versus the secular world. There's such hate and disdain there, the undercurrents of it, for the most part, but sometimes it's open. Ashkenazi, Sephardi in some of the groups, and not necessarily only religious groups and secular groups as well. We're really doing I think we're doing very poorly, and I think it's one of the poorest times with regard to sinat chinam, right, that we've ever had since I'm in Israel. It's almost 50 years.
Wow.
Okay. And I know what I'm feeling. I want to tell you that sinat chinam means I'm the right group and you're, even if I say you're b'di'evid, okay, that's sinat chinam also. I'm real, but you're close. All these groups have just as much legitimacy as the group that you belong to. Okay, that's what you have to get into your head. You have to start thinking, they are legitimate. They're not what I would join. They're not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking to stress other things in my Judaism. That's fine. But that doesn't make them less legitimate. And that's what we have to understand. Sinas chinam means that the other group is not legitimate, that the other hashkafa is not legitimate. It's not l'chatchila, right? We have to get rid of that. And that's why I say, in this sense, I feel Chappelle's and Midrash Shmuel can play a tremendous role in every neighborhood that they go to. They could be a Haredi neighborhood. They could be a Dati Lumi neighborhood. They could be somewhere in between. In America or in Israel, we have all those neighborhoods. You have the five towns. Then you have Muncie, and then you have Passaic, and then you have different places in New Jersey, Teaneck, right? Whatever group and stream we join, we have to always have a consciousness to make sure that we're giving importance to the other stream as well.
I'll tell you one just quick anecdote, Rabbi. When I lived in Milwaukee, I know it's a small community, um, but there are some wonderful Chappelle's and Midrash Rachel alumni in Milwaukee, as you know.
Sure.
And at one point, the rabbi said to me, I'd like to get, another, I don't remember what number he said, but I'd like to fill up the community with Chappelle's and Midrash Rachel alumni. That's what he said to me. How can we do that? And there was actually a time when he even considered, like buying me a plane ticket to come to visit the schools to try to recruit people to come to Milwaukee because they were so impressed with this aspect of our students because if I'm and you correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing you say and what I think the overall message is that like this is not easy. Right now, it's really not easy, but that it takes a certain amount of confidence and let's call it self-esteem, like a real sense of belief in what you believe in, which
Right,
are going back to what you said in the first question, that primary hashkafa. And that
right.
once you have enveloped within yourself the primary hashkafa, you understand that the secondary hashkafa, while it's very important to you on a personal level, it's secondary. It's not the
Right.
primary hashkafa. Is that a good
Yeah.
way of putting
Yeah,
it?
excellent. That's excellent. I mean, what you pointed out is really excellent also because you were saying that, you know, people have to be confident in the system they believe in and the system that they live through. A lot of times I have found exactly what you were, what implying that a lot of times people are insecure, and when they're insecure, they have to criticize the other person.
Mhm.
People who are secure with their Judaism don't feel they need to criticize anybody. Reb Shlomo Wolbe, by the way, said this openly. He said that when we criticize Zionistic people, it's because we don't feel comfortable.
Hmm.
If we would be comfortable in our Judaism and we would be relaxed in our Judaism in the sense of we're confident we're doing the right thing, we wouldn't be having to criticize somebody else. We don't have to put someone else down to make ourselves look good. We
Hmm.
look good. We're confident. We look good. So why are we trying to put anyone else down? Why are we working
Beautiful.
on that? Right? And I think that's really important is that, the Chappelle's world and Midrash Rachel world, they have the ability because of the education they got. They just have to sometimes speak up, right? And with if they speak up, they're going to introduce something that a lot of people may not be so ready to accept. But if you say it enough times and you show people that there's wonderful people in all the communities, right? There are people who are studying Torah in all the communities, and people who are doing chesed in all the communities. We're not, Rabbi Yaakov was saying, we're not in a race for who's better.
Hmm.
Everybody has their job, right? And that's why the Chazal say, by when he gathered them all together, Tziva lahem ala machlokes. He was commanding them not to have machlokes. That's the worst thing, to have machlokes. He says they brought them all together. Yaakov brought them all together, gave them different brachas because there's different options. There's 12 different options here. But they all have one thing in common. We need them all, right? We need them all, and we have to just open our eyes to see why we need them all.
Oh, so inspiring to talk to you, Rabbi. Okay, we're not done yet because
Sure.
I think that as as we've already intimated, right? We can't really talk about this just for ourselves because for ourselves, okay, that's fine. We can be one way. We can be open-minded. We can be strong and confident. But then, we are raising children in these communities, and generally, whether you're in Chutz La'aretz in North America, in Europe, or in Israel, okay, South America, wherever people are, they tend to gravitate towards communities with other people that are pretty much like them, right? And then we're raising kids, and the kids are not really, meaning, first of all, they didn't go to Chappelle's and Midrash Rachel, right? So on a very basic level, like they didn't drink that Kool-Aid from the time that they were, started sort of learning and understanding things. Now, obviously, there are kids, right? So hopefully they imbibe some of the values of the home, but in the end of the day, kids do want to fit in. It's just really important to them. They want to fit in, and in many cases, if they don't fit in, it ends up being very challenging. So, my question for you is, how do we raise children who are deeply committed to their own Torah values without teaching them that anyone who sees things differently is somehow less than or not as good? And what should we be doing in our homes to make sure that perspective becomes part of the next generation?
Okay, that's a great question. It's not an easy question to answer. It's pretty complicated.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Quite all right to be asked. I think every parent from Darche Noam, the schools of Darche Noam, Darche Chappelle, needs to ask themselves that question as their kids are growing up. Um, so first of all, you have to, children learn by model. So you have to be a model for the kids, okay? If they see you criticizing others, judging others, unless they're very unique, they're going to start doing that too. Now, they get enough of that in school. They don't need to get it at home, unfortunately. So in school, they will meet people who, and I get calls, by the way, I get calls from alumni all over the United States. Okay, all over the United States, from the East Coast to the West Coast, with this issue. The kid is hearing in school that this is the only right way. The kid is hearing in school criticizing the other group, so to speak, right? And sometimes I actually have to speak to the child. I mean, we talk about child, the child could be a teenager already, a little bit older. But they have to put the child on the phone because when he hears it from me, it may be a little bit different than he hears it from his parents, so to speak, right? Which a lot of times is true. When the parents say it, the kids don't accept it, but when someone else says it, they accept it more readily, fortunately and unfortunately. But I've had discussions with these kids, and I've told them exactly what I'm telling you. When I'm telling the people we're talking to today, right, is that the schools sometimes are very judgmental. Okay, no school is perfect. Okay, we take what's good in the school, we leave what's not so good in the school. But I feel the parents of Darche Noam have the awareness, okay,
Hmm.
and the clarity to be able to say at home. Now, I want to tell you, I'm gonna be very personal here. In my home, I criticize different groups, but I always make sure to say when I criticize the group, but there's something in that group that nobody else has.
Hmm.
In other words, if that group did something, right? That group did something which got into the newspapers or the kids heard about, right? They're going to come and ask me about it. Now, I'm not going to lie to them or say to them, other people would say to them, we shouldn't really talk about these things.
Okay.
That's not me. Okay. I'm a guy, I'm someone who searches the truth. And I'm going to say, if that is something proven, it's a problem. But I'll always say, I just want you to know that that group, there's nobody like it. I'll give you a very simple example. Okay.
Okay.
Um, Today, the Haredi world is being very criticized. And I'm not going into the whole Haredi world, certainly of Israel, is being very criticized. I'm not going into the whole discussion, right? That in itself is a very long discussion. I have pointed out to my kids who have spoken to me about this over the years, it's not just now, over the years. I said, Yat Sarah in this country, okay, which serves the whole country. There's Yat Sarah all over the country. I want to tell you, it's in the Druze part of Israel. It's in the Arab part of Israel, the Muslim part of Israel. Yat
Uh-huh.
Sarah is everywhere. Okay. It
Hmm.
started out in a bus. Okay. I remember the bus, the broken down bus, right? That was their office, and that's where they used to give the equipment from. It was right next to Beker Cholim Hospital. Okay,
Wow.
on the grounds. I remember it. And it became this huge organization, right? That
Right.
huge organization was started by someone Haredi, right? There are doctors in Israel, many doctors, that will call referrer to suggest a doctor in Chutz La'aretz. He knows every doctor, every great doctor all over the world, from Europe to the United States to Canada to Australia. Okay. This is a service that he supplies to everybody. It doesn't matter if your kippah is black. It doesn't matter if it's knitted, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't exist, your kippah. Okay. There are many organizations that the Haredi world started that would never have been here. Okay. I'm not criticizing other people. I'm saying you see where their strengths lie, and you have to appreciate that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So when I'll talk about something that I don't agree with in the Haredi world, I'll say, but take a look. Take a look what they've done in Israel. Don't think, parasites don't create worlds of chesed. I'm sorry to tell you. We have to try to understand them and, see what they're in. And the same thing, Datilumi world, right? People will criticize. I say, you think we would have the Israel we have today without the Datilumi world? No way. These people settle places on hilltops and mountains, right? That I wouldn't go in a million years.
Hmm.
Okay, I couldn't live there probably for 48 hours, certainly not a
Hmm.
week, right?
Hmm.
And these people who send their kids and they're not afraid. I'm
Hmm.
afraid. They're
Hmm.
not afraid to go up there. Their idealism to settle the Eretz Yisrael, and that's not the state of Israel. That's Eretz Yisrael, right?
Wow.
It's for me most inspiring thing when I see a kid like that really is willing to do that, or a young couple, he's 21, she's 19, and they don't even have a doubt where they're going to be living, in this caravan that's like 30 square meters, and then they all of a sudden have three kids in a caravan of 30 squares. I would go to a mental hospital, and
Right.
you speak to them, it's the most wonderful place they could be. right? I am Pasha jealous of kids like that.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, so there's so many good things in all the different groups in the Hasidic world, and there's so much to choose from in the Hasidic world. The simcha of the Hasidic world, right? The humor of the Hasidic world, right? You speak to these Hasidic guys, and they got such great humor they talk to you about. I sometimes talk to them in Yiddish, right? Uh, There's so much there. There's so much richness and
Hmm.
wealth in the Hasidic world of,
Hmm.
of spirituality,
Hmm.
right? So, a person doesn't like this of Chabad, he doesn't like this of Satmar, but when you take a look, the Satmar people have so much to give, and the Chabad people, we know that have so much to give, right? We think, oh, the Satmar people, anti-Israel. Okay, I don't agree with them about Israel. Okay, but there's so many other things if you look into the Satmar world, right? So that's why I say you just have to look for the good. And even if you're critical, you always have to say to the kids, you always have to make sure to say, but there's a lot of good things by them also. There's a lot of good, legitimate things. And that's what the kids will see. They will see if you're, just like, there are unfortunately families that are bigoted. I remember in America, there were families that were anti-black. They used to make fun of, in the frum world, make fun of the African Americans, the black people. In my family, we never did that.
Hmm.
Right? We never did that. My father used to look if there was a nice black person on the block, he became friendly with him,
Hmm.
and we knew that we weren't racist in that sense. We look at people, and there's good people in the world, and there's not such good people. There's good people in Judaism, and there's not such good people in Judaism. Within all that, within the whole spectrum, that's what we have to, ingrain into our kids is that, yes, there's no perfect, but they all have very good things to offer us. And you never know. One day you may need Yat Zora. And you never know. Maybe Chas v'Shalom Lo Aleinu, you may need Dr. Führer, you know. And there's many organizations. I just gave you an example of two, but we could talk about it for hours about what they've given in Chesed to Eretz Israel.
Can
So,
I
yeah,
just
sure.
stop you though for a second?
Sure.
Are you at a good stopping point? Okay.
Always.
Okay, because I love what you're saying and I love it, especially in theory. I mean, I think that what ends up happening is that when you think to speak to your kids that way, you also have to see it yourself, right? Meaning you have to be able to say what's good about the people that are not just like you. So you have to know it in order to say it to your kids. And I think that like I don't even know if I realized exactly what I personally have been feeling, as you mentioned, about the level of sinas chinam that we find ourselves living through. So hearing what you're saying is just like such a wonderful reminder, and it's so refreshing. However,
Right.
I do think that there's two fears, okay? One of the fears, like you said about your family and, the neighbors on the block. So I think a lot of parents feel that if they make friends with the non-Jewish neighbors, or let's say the neighbors that maybe are Jewish but aren't exactly like them, that the kids are going to be opened up to something that they might like better than what they have at home, okay? That's one fear. And the second fear is a little more extreme. But you know that expression that people always say that, like, when you're so open-minded, sometimes your brains fall out, right?
Yeah.
So I guess where is that balance? How do you find that balance between being as open-minded as we want people to have the confidence to be, but without letting the brains fall out?
I'll tell you, I feel that I mean it's excellent. It's an excellent point. And I mentioned before that this is not an easy this aspect of your topic is not an easy topic that would discuss. This with the children is not an easy thing. But I really feel that if people um, are comfortable um, and they feel uh, uh, sure in what they're doing is a Torah lifestyle, right? Then they don't really have to fear the people down the block, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
If they really can impart into their kids, like, this is real Torah Judaism, I don't think they really have to worry. People worry because they're insecure.
Hmm.
Right? That I said that a lot of times leads to sinat chinam, is the insecurities that they have. They have to look at their insecurities and look into it and become more secure with their Judaism. And if they need to work on the Judaism to become more secure, they have to do that. But if you are secure with your Judaism, to the contrary, you send your kid down the block as a model for a beautiful Judaism. And
Hmm.
I want the secular person to say, I didn't really like religious Jews so much. But that family down the block, it changed my mind. When I
Hmm.
was in the Israeli army, they kept insisting, Itzik, you're not Haredi.
Hmm.
So I said to them, why do you have to keep insisting? Every time we were in Miluim, it would come up and they would say to me, "Aval ata lo Haredi." So I said, but I'm wearing the black kippah, right? So he says, Ken, aval lo b'diuk. So, because they couldn't handle that I would be Haredi, right? And be okay. Right?
Uh-huh.
So אתה לא חרדי. No, no, you are Haredi, but there are very nice Haredi people, wonderful Haredi people, right? And they, unfortunately, a lot of these people didn't see it in the army because they weren't from areas that they only heard about Haredim in the newspapers. They never really met them, right? So the point over here is that I was very confident in my Judaism. Okay, so I was there to try to make a Kiddush Hashem. And
Hmm.
that's what the kids have to be raised. They have to
Hmm.
be raised in saying, you know what, we're here to make a Kiddush Hashem so other
Hmm.
people will see that Torah Judaism and a rich, observant lifestyle is very meaningful.
Hmm.
That's what we're here for. That's where how we certainly have to be a light unto ourselves if we have to be a light unto nations. So
Hmm.
I'm not really worried about that. I think that the Haredi world in Eretz Yisrael or Dati Leumi world in Eretz Yisrael, they're all worried about living with the other person. If I live with a Haredi, maybe my son will come Haredi, or my daughter. If I live with a Dati Leumi person, so they have these neighbors, isolated neighborhoods, which I feel is a big mistake. I
Hmm.
feel if your kids grow up and they don't see that you're confused about your Judaism, they'll be very solid,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And they could go down the block and play with a guy with a knitted kippah. They could play basketball with a guy with a knitted kippah. I was able to do that, and I was able to play with Italians. And I didn't say, Dad, I think I want to be an Italian, right? You know, uh, well, we knew that we had a beautiful Judaism and it was a wonderful way of life, but we could share that with the other groups and also even with non-Jewish groups. We could share it. We want them to see that. I have a woman that comes every Thursday to clean the home. She's from, I forget where she's from exactly, right? She's not a Filipino, she's from a different place. And she loves coming, she comes to me and she comes to a number of daughters of mine, right? And she says, you're such wonderful people, right? That's what I want them to see. I want them to see an Israeli religious person being a wonderful person. And she'll go back to wherever she comes from, saying, you guys got it all wrong, right? I was there, right? And that's what we should be doing with the secular world here in Israel. I want us to give them more of a chance than they give us.
Hmm.
That's the way I feel.
It sounds like it sounds like this kind of fear-based Judaism, according to your opinion, is somewhat missing the mark.
Correct.
Like it seems unnecessary in the way that you're putting it.
Correct. I think it's unnecessary. And people don't realize that. They think like I have, being scared is safe. No, being scared means you are unsure of your Judaism.
Hmm.
And that message gets sent to the child. My parents, right, are insecure with their Judaism. So maybe
Hmm.
Judaism isn't real.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I think, you were open about your family. I think I'll just share one anecdote about mine.
Sure.
I don't know if our listeners know, but I made Aliyah about 5 years ago. So the joke in the family is that I waited till all the kids were the wrong age to bring them on Aliyah, and then we came. And that is really true. But Baruch Hashem, it was not easy, but it's been wonderful, really wonderful. And if anybody wants to talk about that, I'm always happy to talk about it offline. Um, but a, I would say, a while after we were here, let's just say a year, we moved into a community that is rare in the sense that it is actually quite diverse in Israel, especially in Jerusalem. It is actually quite
Correct.
diverse.
I agree.
And yeah, and quite different than the community that we came from, um, in many, many ways. And one of the things that one of my kids, or I don't know if it was just one, but that the kids said to us after about a year is they said, "We're so grateful that you and Abba didn't change." Meaning, we moved to a new country, we moved to a new community, but like the way that you experience your Judaism, the way you live your Judaism didn't change. And I think for them, trying to acclimate again, and find their place in the Jewish world in a whole new environment, that was extremely comforting for them. It was very grounding for them.
I agree. I think that showed your kids that you're very secure in your Judaism.
Well, I'm not sure, but I do, I hope so. I mean, that was certainly our hope,
Right.
certainly our hope. Yeah. Okay, is there anything else you want to add? You think we've covered it? I mean, like you said, we could probably go on and on about this
For sure.
topic forever, but I do
And
think
again, if anyone wants to write me, critique me, or write me for is more information, I'm more than happy to share that. It may take me a week now because we're in the middle of a very huge campaign, so we're pretty busy. But I will answer them if they have questions about this.
I'll admit, Rabbi, that while you were talking, I was thinking, boy, there were certainly times, when I was living in Chutz La'aretz that I should have called you more. That is what I was thinking. So thank you, Rabbi Shurin. These conversations always leave me personally feeling so inspired. Okay, so to our friends out there, if anybody has a question that you'd like to submit for a future episode, please email us at questions@darchenoam.org. And before we sign off, I'd like to invite you to support our $1 million campaign. If you believe in the kind of Torah education we've been discussing today, one that develops thoughtful, committed Jews who can engage the broader Torah world with conviction, humility, and most importantly, with respect. We hope you'll partner with us in making that possible for the next generation of students. To learn more and to make your gift, please visit www.darchenoam.org/1 million. If you've benefited and enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with someone else. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Take care.